Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, an alternate accounts story. I'm back again with another alternate account Grand Arena Championship. I have 3 different rounds here that I'm going to show, 3 different matches I should say, and they're all set at 125% speed, so should be pretty interesting. You can see my stats here a little bit. I started off really well with mods, and now it's been like a 3-month dry spell completely. So I'm still in Division 6 in Grand Arena Championships, though I think I just crossed the line recently as of the recording of this. I crossed the threshold to go into Division 5 next time, so stay tuned for Division 5 next time. I don't really know what to expect. As it stands, my first opponent here had a really crazy roster. They had both Darth Revan and Jedi Revan, and that is really huge at the 2 million GP mark. And what's more, on top of that, they also put both of them on defense, and I feel like that's kind of a jerk move, to be honest. Like, at this point, like, most people aren't going to be able to crack either one of those, and I really feel frustrated that, that was their strategy and they're just counting on me having some bad defense so that I can't, so that they'd be able to beat one of my teams and just call it good or something. So, unfortunately for them, I do know that Commander Luke with his whole team is going to be able to beat the Jedi Revan. I know the formula for it, and this is not an optimized Jedi Revan team. They don't have, they have Old Ben, they don't have General Kenobi, and General Kenobi is really the thing that makes this squad extremely difficult to beat. And so, I mean, the formula for this is basically use Han's first shot to shoot Jolee, and he has such a high tenacity that he's going to resist, and he's going to give everyone else turn meter. After that happens, the rest of your team is catapulted into going first before any of the other guys, even if they're being outspeeded. After that, if they have General Kenobi, you need to use Luke to apply buff immunity, which means that General Kenobi can't taunt passively. And then after that, you just want to take down Yoda or whoever is closest to losing all their health, except for Jolee. You want to take him down. Revan will revive them automatically due to Savior, and then you take down Jolee as fast as you can. Once you get Jolee down, you can absolutely win the rest of the match. So after that, it was relatively easy. My opponent also had a really strong Old Republic team, which they put on defense, and they basically put everything on defense, which even if it's a sound strategy, which I'm not convinced it is, well, I think they probably get a lot of wins with this, so maybe it is. Maybe, I hate to admit it, but it probably is an okay strategy for this level. You just like block everyone from being able to get any points, and then you just kind of cherry pick with one decent but not great offensive squad. And if you can do that, you're going to win. But my opponent put everything on defense, and I find that to be extremely boring, even if it's a good strategy, which, as I have already covered extensively already, I don't even want to admit that. So the next match, I am using Bastila lead once again, with Jedi Revan taking the back seat. And I think that for a little bit, I'm actually going to, with this account, I'm just going to run Bastila as lead. And I don't have the resources. Like, I have so many teams I need to be working on right now. I don't think I'm going to develop this Jedi team too much. Now that I have General Kenobi geared up to 12, and it's a decent squad, I will probably end up relegating this squad to as needed gear, or as available, and for the most part that means that they're not going to get gear. But I did throw one of my Zetas onto Jedi Revan. At some point I'll probably find a way to give him one more Zeta, and not give him his lead yet, and eventually I'll probably need to gear him up. But at Gear 9, he's still doing a lot of really great things, and this team can take down pretty much anything right now that I need to. Commander Luke and Jedi Revan can combine to being able to beat just about any two duos of teams, at least at the 2 million mark. At some point, I'm going to need a solid General Grievous counter, because neither of these squads, as currently constructed, are very solid in that regard. Even though I do use Bastila Lead plus Jedi Revan to counter that with my main account, they're just not ready on this account. They're just not strong enough. So one way or another, I'm going to need a Grievous counter. Now, I knew I wasn't going to be able to beat my opponent's Darth Revan team, and so I just didn't even try. Instead, I just used my Ewoks to take out their back zone as well as I could. Being able to find First Order there, kind of gift wrapped for me, was wonderful. They actually had okay gear as well. Like, my opponent very clearly put everything good on defense, and so I'm actually curious what they put on defense in the other back zone. Maybe nothing. I mean, I think that would be wise, is to put, just like a couple level 1 Jawas in the back, because it's defending, the Darth Revan squad is defending the least important zones, and so why would you stack the back zone there with something good? But who knows? I mean, they've surprised me so far, and all we can really hope is that they aren't able to crack my defenses, which my defenses are actually fairly decent as well, if not as completely ball busting as my opponents were. Okay, so I was able to clear those 2 zones, and even though I like to be able to clear all the zones, my opponent just made sure that I wasn't able to, and that's annoying, but it is what it is. Now I'm able to at least just move on, so I don't have to spend more time using the alt in Grand Arena. I did manage to get a defense with Emperor Palpatine, and then I got 20 defenses with my Grievous squad, which is silly because my opponent clearly didn't even have 20 teams. They probably just thought they'd be funny and gift wrapped a bunch of defenses onto my alt account, so now I look like a defensive stalwart, which is actually kind of funny because my opponent it ended up happening that I did the thing to my opponent that they were trying to do to me, which is, I put down defenses that he couldn't get through, and in return, he didn't even crack one of my teams, much less one of my zones, but then I was able to still beat him with whatever my remaining offensive teams were. So my second round opponent had a significantly worse roster than this, other than my past opponent. Like, I think my first opponent was someone who was going to be in the finals, most likely, if they were in the opposite bracket. They just had too strong of teams. And the only reason I was able to beat them was I have enough experience that I was able to beat their squads with, Commander Luke. I knew how to do that counter, so this opponent was a great opportunity to be able to get some undersized wins, and so after a lot of thinking about it, like, this squad was not good, but at the same time, going without Night Sister zombies seems really risky, especially because all of my Night Sisters are either gear 8 or gear 9 here. Zombie is actually gear 10, so I was still able to run the table with these guys. They're not a good defensive team. None of these guys are good. Getting 61 banners with Night Sisters may have never been done in the history of this game, to be honest, because the second anyone touches their protection, then the whole team, loses a banner or whatever. And so I went undersized, which is generally a bad idea with Night Sisters to begin with, and I was able to avoid getting any kind of hit on me at all, so I had finished with 61 banners, which is pretty hilarious. I then decided to try my Phoenix against this hodgepodge team here, and it looks like maybe that was a bad idea. They had more hit points than I had given them credit for. I was managing to do some damage, however, and putting Han Solo with this group of people is a really interesting choice. It's possible, I guess, that my opponent's defense is auto-placed, I thought, but then I looked at their roster, and all of their good characters were just not in the front row, which is always how that works. And so they clearly intentionally placed their teams here, and I don't really know what was going on. They were giving me the opportunity to get some of these undersized squad feats, though, which I appreciated. And the first zone, in this division, you have one zone that's worth a little more than the rest of them. So if you can take that zone out, you're always going to benefit from that. Your main goal should always be to get as many banners as you can, and beyond, like, if that zone doesn't have two teams that you can actually beat, then you need to be focusing on the other two zones to hopefully be able to get two full zones cleared. But if you're able to beat those the two squads within the two team zone, then that's what you want to be doing, just to be able to maximize your banners. And you could see that reflected in what I did in the previous round against the Revens. So far, my opponent's defenses are completely lackluster. I know that I've already kind of told you guys that they're bad, but this was great. I hadn't really seen any defenses this bad since I was back in Division 7, so it was kind of refreshing to finally get to that point. And I just wondered how my opponent had actually managed to win their first round. And I don't know, I don't mean to be too harsh to my opponent here. They clearly were able to win, and some of their teams must have held up their opponents, or maybe their opponents just didn't place their defenses, so they were able to win. They clearly went pretty strong on defense here, or on offense, I should say. And so, we're just trying to be as efficient as possible, trying to get as many points as we can. And it had been a while since I got a perfect score on my alt account, so I thought maybe I'd be able to do that. And the Commander Luke team could undersize against him, did just fine. And finally we have this random, it's not too random, resistance squad with the veteran smugglers. And I was just looking at BB-8, who was actually relatively, they were okay geared, and just decided that Ewoks were going to go full strength here, just because all of these characters are not necessarily great together, but resistance can do some damage. Scavenger Ray can do a huge amount of damage, in fact, and BB-8 is really frustrating for Ewoks to be able to beat. So I just decided that with my Gear 11 Ewoks, we would just try to destroy this team of resistance. And I got off to a good start. You always want to target Scavenger Ray when you can, because she has such abysmal hit points and protection. And hopefully that's going to change. Hopefully she'll get some kind of a rework or something now that the new movies are coming out. But I don't really expect that, if we're being honest. So you take out Finn, who was taunting, and he has the ability to heal people, he has the ability to stun, and we're kind of just left with the veteran smugglers, which can do some damage, actually. I know that it's kind of cool to hate on them, and they're not great characters by any stretch, so don't take me as telling you to farm them or work on them, but they can offer some decent resistance to my ability to beat them. However, those may be the first two veteran smugglers my alt account ever destroyed, and this BB-8 was clearly not in the mold of its more survivable friends. I did manage to hit Bronzium League here in my first match, or my second match, and I guess that's okay. The goal is obviously to get Kyber, so that's one step closer. And I did manage to get a full clear. I didn't get the perfect score. I got one short, so my opponent was going to have a hard time getting that, though, against my General Grievous squad. As you can see, they beat my Palpatine squad with one hit, which is good. It's impressive. A lot of people fail against that squad, actually, because I have some decent speed on there. and Vader makes them all go first usually. And then Kira finally lost. I haven't lost that with that team for a really long time, or maybe ever, even though there's partially like made out of Gear 7 people. So I'm just showing you guys my back defense here. Akbar with Nest, which is not amazing. You can see my impressive 37th place in the Sith Triumvirate raid, but if you're running a main account and an alt, you probably understand that, like, I don't ever hit raids ever with my main account or with my alt account, because I just don't have time. So you know, every once in a while maybe I'll throw in a little damage so I can place in a higher prize bracket, but otherwise that's about it. In the finals, my opponent had a pretty ball-busting Padme squad, which looked really scary. It had a bunch of relics on it, and at the 2 million GP mark, like, that's pretty strong. I decided that if that ended up happening, if they put that on defense, that I would just completely ignore it. But happily, both of the front zones were free of Padme, which is solid. Once again, I'm going to use Ewoks to take out First Order, and I want to just reiterate to you guys that if you're going to run First Order, you need Kylo Ren, like the original Kylo Ren. He is just too good to leave out, and you know, that's not me ragging on my opponent here too much. You know, a lot of people just don't realize, like, they think, oh, well, one Kylo's enough, and you know, I would agree that Unmasked is a better character than the original Kylo, but the original Kylo is just so good on that team. Like, he is absolutely, I would say he's probably the second most important character on that team, more important even than First Order Executioner, and I love First Order Executioner. So please, if you're gonna work on First Order, just please put Kylo Ren in there. It's a good idea. So I decided in this match, part of my strategy was, you know, that my opponent had a relatively strong Night Sister squad in the 2-man zone, and I knew that Commander Luke can beat that squad, but that's not a great chance of being able to beat it. Like, it's a very difficult squad to beat with Commander Luke at times. There's a lot of RNG or luck associated with it, and so I decided I wanted to see what was in the other 2 zones first, and if I could clear those 2 zones out without a huge amount of difficulty, then I was going to be able to you know, try with Commander Luke. And if I could try that match and beat the Night Sisters, then wonderful. I'd be able to proceed with the complete eradication and annihilation of their zones, and if not, at least I had 2 zones that I was able to take out. And my opponent had already attacked some and failed a little, so I was a little confident that I'd be able to do this. But when you're facing Night Sisters, it's a pretty tricky situation. Like, what you want to do, what your goal needs to be, is to get 2 pretty quick kills against the Night Sisters, and that's because Zombie has the ability to revive them. So you want to choose 2 of the weakest Night Sisters that you can find and get kills on them right away. Zombie will then kill herself to revive them, and then she'll bring herself back because she can't ever be actually completely destroyed. So it doesn't work to be able to kill Zombie twice in a row. Zombie doesn't count, so you have to pick one of the other 4. And once that happens, then Zombie stops reviving characters, and then you need to kill Old Daka right away, because Old Daka has the ability to revive other characters on the team. Once that happens, you need to target Talzin, because Talzin has the ability to revive characters through her special, and if she kills someone with her special, then she'll revive another character. And so I've had things happen where it's like Talzin's the only one left, you know, Talzin and Zombie, or Old Daka and Zombie, and you're like, yeah, I've got this, and then Old Daka gets a turn and she revives the entire team, or Talzin gets a turn and, you know, she's able to take one of the characters out, and then Old Daka comes in and then she revives the whole team, and you know, it happens so fast and you just lose. And you know, that does just happen sometimes, so just be cautious about that. Alright, we have Geonosians here, and this is actually a really strong team, and my opponent was wise to work on this team, honestly. It can be really hard for any roster to be able to take them out, and there's not a huge level of investment. My opponent put some gear on them, and this is not a squad that I would really trust my Ewoks to beat, to be honest. Like, I needed at least some pretty high level characters to be able to beat them. The target priority always needs to be, if you can take out Brood Alpha, you do it. If you can't take out Brood Alpha right away, then you need to take out Geonosian Soldier and just target them. And I did manage to beat this fairly overwhelmingly. The Jedi are a relatively strong squad, and being able to ignore the taunt from the Brute is good and everything with Revan's Mark. But you'll notice that I definitely did not go undersized there. As a final nod in appreciation to me, my opponent put a clone squad with Shakti in the back, and they were pretty low geared, but with Shakti, like, that squad is not to be underestimated. And so I took a full 5-man squad with Phoenix and just decided to go for it. It's pretty tricky. My opponent even had Barris in there, and these clones are pretty strong under Shakti. Like, I really want to try to work on this squad myself. In fact, for this alt, I don't know if I'm going to be able to right now. There's just so much I need to be working on. Right now, I think the priority is going to be working on Galactic Republic ships and all the characters that are associated with that, which means I could probably work on at least Rex and Fives, but otherwise probably not Shakti anytime too soon. So I did manage to get a full clear. Not all of my attacks were real pretty, but as I showed you before, my opponent had failed a couple attacks, so I was confident that I would win at this point. 2 fails against my Emperor Palpatine team. They clearly used their Padme squad to take out my Grievous team, which is great. That's totally fine, because then they tripped up against the Bosk team. And they had some solid teams on defense, but they clearly didn't have some like really grade A offensive teams as well. So my defense held, and I managed to take the win. So that was a good start for my alt, getting a full clear against each of my opponents except for my first. And even more importantly, I got the group win, which meant that I got a couple more Zeta mats and more upgrade mats for mods, which this account really needs. And overall, just a great result. Hopefully my next round will be good. I actually know the results for the next 2 matches, because that's what I'm recording, but I will let you guys be in suspense. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.